Daniel Harper had been a bus driver for nearly 20 years. He knew every twist and turn of the quiet country roads of Montana like the back of his hand. The sun was shining bright that afternoon, casting golden light over the rolling green fields and towering pine trees. It was a peaceful day, the kind that made him appreciate the simple rhythm of life. He was halfway through his final route of the day when he saw something unusual in the distance, a dark figure lying in the middle of the road. At first he thought it might be a fallen log or a large dog, but as the bus rolled closer, his heart skipped a beat. It was a bear. Daniel pressed the brakes and brought the bus to a slow stop, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel. He had seen plenty of wildlife along these roads before: deer, coyotes, even the occasional moose, but never a bear, and certainly never one lying so still. For a moment, he just watched, unsure of what to do. Then, as he studied the animal, he noticed the slow rising and falling of its chest. It was breathing. A mixture of relief and concern washed over him. Carefully, he stepped out of the bus, his boots crunching against the warm gravel. The bear, a female grizzly, barely reacted to his presence. Her massive body stretched across the asphalt, her fur dusty and matted. She was thin, too thin for a bear that should have been strong and thriving this time of year. Daniel took a cautious step closer. "Hey there, girl," he murmured softly. The bear's eyes flickered open slightly, meeting his gaze for just a moment before closing again. Her body was weak, her breathing labored. She wasn't dead, but she was close to giving up. Daniel hesitated. Wild animals weren't something you just walked up to and touched, but something about the way she lay there, defeated, helpless, made it impossible for him to just drive away. He turned and jogged back to the bus, pulling an old tarp from under the seats. He spread it beside the bear, and with careful effort began shifting her onto it. The bear let out a low groan, but didn't resist. She was too weak to fight him. Using all his strength, Daniel dragged her towards the open doors of the bus, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. He had no idea if this was the right thing to do, but he couldn't just leave her. With one last heave, he got her inside and onto the floor near the front steps. "Hang in there, girl," he muttered as he climbed back into the driver's seat and started the engine. Back at his small home on the outskirts of town, Daniel turned his garage into a makeshift recovery space. He laid down thick blankets and kept a bowl of cool water nearby. For the first few hours, the bear barely moved. Daniel sat a few feet away, keeping an eye on her. Every now and then, he spoke softly, just so she wouldn't feel alone. "I don't know what happened to you," he said, "but you're safe now." By the next morning, the bear showed signs of life. She lifted her head slightly and sniffed the air, her dark eyes scanning her surrounding. Daniel watched as she slowly, cautiously, took a few sips of water. Over the next 3 days, he nursed her back to strength. He fed her small portions of salmon, careful not to overwhelm her fragile stomach. He left the garage door open so she could get fresh air, but she never tried to leave. He started calling her Maggie. "You're a tough one, Maggie," he said one evening, watching as she chewed on a fish he had brought from town. "But I think you've got somewhere else you need to be." Daniel had been reading reports online about a mother bear seen with cubs near the riverbanks about 10 miles away. A week ago, the cubs had been spotted alone, without their mother. His gut told him Maggie was their mother. It was time to take her home. Early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Daniel backed his truck out of the garage and carefully guided Maggie into the back. She was still weak, but her strength had returned enough for her to stand on her own. The drive was slow and steady, the fresh morning air filling the truck's cabin. Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror every now and then, watching as Maggie sat quietly, looking out at the trees passing by. When they reached the river, he pulled over and cut the engine. "This is it, girl," he said as he stepped out. Maggie climbed down from the truck, her large paws pressing into the soft earth. She looked around, sniffing the air, her ears twitching. Then Daniel saw them. 2 small figures emerged from the thick brush, 2 tiny bear cubs. They hesitated at first, as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, they ran toward Maggie, nuzzling into her fur, making small, excited noises. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He watched as Maggie lowered her head, letting out a deep, gentle huff. The cubs clung to her, their tiny bodies pressing against her for warmth and comfort. She was home. Daniel took a step back, smiling to himself. His job was done. As he turned toward his truck, he heard a sound behind him, a low, rumbling growl. He turned back and saw Maggie standing still, watching him. For a moment, she just looked at him, her dark eyes calm and knowing. And then, in the smallest of movements, she dipped her head, just slightly, almost like a silent thank you. Daniel chuckled softly. "You take care, Maggie." Without another word, he climbed into his truck and started the engine. As he drove away, he glanced in the mirror one last time, watching as Maggie and her cubs disappeared into the tree. The morning sun shined bright over the horizon, casting golden light over the forest, and in his heart Daniel knew he had done something good, because sometimes kindness didn't need words. It just needed a moment of courage and a heart willing to help.